Get out the board. Put on some Kong. Get to thinking about euros. So I did some off-camera work. Gave the rest of the world board a rough coat of paint. Got lines. It's got terrain, color layer on there. Texture to be provided at some later point. It's got all the grids. All this data space up here. Diplomacy zone. Too close. Diplomacy zone, economy zone, time zone, science zone. And all these mechanic containing parts of the board, though. This is where there's potential to start thinking about some reconfiguring. Because these have a lot of footprint for all the data they are containing. And all sorts of reorganizing could be done to make them more dense, or similar density but more useful. Also under consideration, so if I just briefly take away the colorizing here. Dense is definitely a problem that the rest of the world map has. It has a lot of information associated with that every colonial zone. Because look, there's the 3 economy numbers, then trade good numbers, and then local native population. So you got 5+ numbers, because some zones have more than one trade good. Like, yeah, actually here is... I think that's fur and tobacco might be orange square? Maybe. Yeah, because like white square is cotton. Well, no, white square is sugar, and pink square is cotton, I think. They're all written down somewhere. All appropriately stored, book-wise. But yeah, a lot of data. That's all just kind of slathered about irregularly on map as was written. The thing I think should be done here is to kind of condense all of these into kind of a glyph. A sigil that can be stamped onto the board in one spot and contain all of that. Just like a little sign. Or if such a symbol doesn't conveniently fit into the pixel space provided, then offloading all of that data onto a table externally, but that's a fallback. And of course all the colonial zone stank lines need to be added to these regular borders here to properly highlight where each of those is. There's a lot of those. All about the place. For now, though, grids. Grids where rules live. Diplomacy grid is probably about the right size. Since I'll just take the current background redraw and drop it to half intensity. Yeah, neutrals, a big pile of tokens would live here at all times, and then you need a row per player and a column per status, and then that's a convenient visualization of where everything goes together. Yes, that's all just in need of relabeling and can otherwise just stand on its own. It's a table. Might not need the glossary of symbols on there. That could go alongside when designs for diplomacy counters happen. Economy track, though. Yeah, it can stand out alongside how all the data having parts of this are nicely color-coded to immediately kind of grab the eye. And the ones that are big progression tracks are also gradients. So there's, you know, low over here and high down there in the far corner. This final row here ended up squished because that's the difference between the high and low points on... That's how much the original pages were kind of crumpled over the course of the scanning process. So decisions were made. Nothing terribly important lives in these squares. They could all be made shorter. Everything about these could be crunched down to create room for something else if I wanted some other indicator to exist in this general vicinity. Round counter is just a block of rounds, though, and yeah, so a lot of these aren't making any meaningful use of, like, color coding to help make their data kind of pop at a glance. And that's something you could do. Because, like, so for the resource exploitation tracker here, that's used as a guide for price drift. This is a spectrum. Way onto this side you have up, 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 and then you have gently up, and then wiggle about neutral. Then all the way up here you have oversupply. So rather than having that indicated by these little tick marks entirely, you could color code that out. And likewise, you could do anything with the price tracker up there. Alright, let me trim these splotchy bits off of the ocean. That is on ocean layer, right? Yes. Oh, right, I have an ocean layer group, inside of which is the actual ocean bitmap, and nothing else yet. Ocean-related icons will eventually live in there, on separate layers. Trade zone, piracy, and what have you. Yeah, there we go. Just clear off everywhere where that was overflowing. Sea level's now completely under control. So yeah, economy track. Stability track could also stand to be blitzed up a bit. Where, so alongside having just general thoughts about this while doing the rough coat of paint, it did reoccur to me in looking at this that it is the year 2019 and we recognize that color perception is a thing that's not always fully there for everyone. And man, there are a lot of red to green gradients. There's a lot of things that take that as a natural contrast. For high number, low number, positive number, negative number. There's a decent percentage of eyes to which that results in just kind of the brown track. At all times, stability level is sludge. Let me take the layer back up to full strength here. And then just kind of have a think about stability. It's like, hey, what if instead of red all through to green, we do a red to blue? How would that look? What if it was purple? What if France? Although, Boardgame Euro stops well short of Napoleonic times. As can be seen down there. Just kind of eyeballing out a series of intermediate levels of redness and blueness. It's not a bad look. Your range of statuses from neutral to fine to less than fine. And I'm just gonna drop those to half. Three-quarters and then over a white backing. Label them appropriately. Yeah, it's got a bit of a look to it. And then our use of green ends up here on the label itself. Although kinda richen that up a bit. I do wonder what the original font down there is. Whatever it is probably still present in just like standard fonts of the world. It has to be a font that was known and included in paint programs 25 years ago. Hmm. Well, whatever it is, I can adjust it later. Just get it down in times for now. Alright, gotta sizen that down. And of course make it not the color of the background that I just put under it. Really, you don't want to let me type with alt codes. You don't want to let me grab accented characters. Oh, how about I just grab one of these from the wild and pop it in there? There's a whole bunch of other layer grouping I probably want to do for housekeeping on text. Keep it all properly sorted, but still, like, isolated. Take advantage of modern image manipulation to kind of quarantine everything. And yes, per the origins of the game, most of the text of the board is on there in French. Yeah, give me a bold 0. Capital 0. Take advantage of the power of modern image manipulation to then do the most primitive garbage to get text positioned where I want it in space. It's all good. Yeah, and then scribbled on underneath here were just the mention of what being at each of these stability levels does. Which, by the way, stability +1 is your actual neutral. Neutral is minus 10% income. Being fully unstable, half your income. And I believe these are reduced chance of survival for your monarch. On your rolls to not have your king drop dead and be forced into succession each turn. Bad stability just boosts that. And a reward for heavily investing and achieving unbelievable prosperity beyond measure. 10%. Just 10%. Seeing that blue against the text. Bit darker than the red end of the scale. Let me lighten that up. Yeah, preserve that good contrast. Yeah, +1 survival. The survival roll you want to roll low. There are lots of situations where large number is a bad thing. Minus 50, minus 33, minus 25, minus 10, and then plus 10. Way off over on the side. kind of immediate thought when these three boxes have the same label in them is to just make one label that spans the three boxes. And then just how to format that. Make it nicely span all of them. Line all these up a bit. Yeah, and then if I just, like, extrude some lines out the side of this. Although, hold on. Yeah, can we get all this the same size, though? Yeah, there's no way characters are going to make that look good. Let me pop back down. Or rather, I will put a graphic layer up here with the text boxes. Some other color that isn't going to collide with any of the shades of red. Still pop as a background. Try an orange. Your big caution stripe here. More survive. You have been warned of survival. So, resource bar. Thinking about exploits. And so we got there's like two main segments really. There's a sizable stretch here of just price goes up twice. And then this sizable stretch of price wobbles indefinitely. Then kind of change over periods between the zones. Then way off over here, price decays. And price decays more. So I'm looking for, like, 3 colors. Or 3 intensities of a single color. And some in-betweens. Could get away with just green for this. Just varying intensities of green. Since I've excluded green entirely from the stability track. You can just sit over here and be its own thing. Of course, that's full green, and then I need a couple of lower steps of green. Where at the moment these are also being dropped through half opacity, but I can adjust that separately as things go. Yeah, I'm not concerned if this isn't the most drastic of gradients visually. First calling is depleted. Deploy. Second calling. Yes, let me full power. Full power for the overall background, and then drop specifically this segment to half. There's another layer of thinking about that these dashes really don't have to be on the outside. There's no tile where there's more than 3 of these in play. You could drag them into the box and just make them pluses and minuses. or little ups and downs. Yeah, so if I then just do something like this. Disappointing hyphen there. Yeah, there we go. Now we're formatting. Give me that fixed width. Although now I need to thread the needle of, which size of font is going to be, like, exactly a divisor for how large I've made these cells. Well, I can also always flatten these out into an image and fine-tune them afterwards. Yeah, plus plus minus. This is into the plus minus zone. Gonna reuse the layer that I've used to, gotta put that backing under the stability bar. And have it also serve here. Well, hold on. What was my base color here? Extract that back out. There we go. And just go ahead and generate another E from elsewhere. Just smuggle in. Now, what else to actually toy with? The combat round counter is kinda... yeah, just kinda there. Doesn't need to contain any information. There's nothing special about it. It's a timer. How complicated is this to play as a board game? Paperwork. Spreadsheet. You have a lot of numbers to write down and keep track of, but as far as the number of things you're doing on any given turn, there's not terribly many. It's not the heftiest of boarded games. You have numbers to write and dice to throw. Yeah, I'd almost think of getting rid of the rounds counter entirely. It does have its one purpose to serve. It's just also... it's there. I guess the thing would be to give it anything but the background color. Just separate it properly from the background. Just make it pop even slightly. Yeah, just make it gray. Just gray bar. There it is. Rounds. It's just rounds. Yes, rounds. Alright, let's add the slightest bit of character to the rounds gauge. Since it only goes to 11. Just give me one smaller space. Yeah, adds numbers. Also setting up here on the bar. I cut out the space for a cup. Actually, did I get all the... I got all the notes that have background coloration on them. There's this one other bit of fine print text up here. Yeah, I think that's indicating that each of these is where the starting value is. At any time, I can look back to the actual physical paper. Where all the text survived in much better condition. Yeah, so these are initial values, and then there's also caps on the values of each trade good. I think that's what the lower ones are for. And always go consult the book. The Euro Manual. Let's see, price fluctuations. Yeah, prices have a ceiling. That's what's being indicated by the names on the lower track. They have maximum and minimum value. So where are minimums noted? Are the price floors also their initial values? Hmm. Hmm. Sequence of play. So I have two documents containing the rules. One, which is typing out the complete text of the rulebook, such as is shipped with the game. The other is a PDF, which has attempted to crunch down all of those to just their vital text, to make the whole thing more readable. Processing the raw text into a slab of board game law. In order to decide what to do with the physical real estate here, you need to dig into what it's for. Alright. So, section 35.2, price of exotic resources. sugar, cotton, tobacco, spice, fish, fur, and products of the Orient, such as silk and chinaware. And slaves. Prices fluctuate according to offer and demand. Value indicated on prices track just below prices marker. So the upper lane here is just for storing the tokens, and then down here is the number that corresponds to that position. Which it takes 2 steps in either direction to get a change in price most of the way, and then way up here at the end, it jumps from 8 to 9 to 10 in short order. Splitted quantity depend on the number produced in total colonies and trading posts of all players in minor countries. Indicated under its quantity marker. On the exploded quantity track, which, we just finished repainting. Alright, that's what it is. So each scenario, each campaign has written down where each resource should start on all of these tracks. Meaning that each mention of their names here is in fact. Yeah, that's minimum. Smudged in there. Probably. And down here is maximum. Which, what if we move that data up? Since there's no... There's one point where 2 things have their values collide on a single column. And there's a couple of goods that have the same floor. Those can be made to get along, though. Leaving the lower track just for numbers. Also, the size of the lower track could then decrease as well. Yeah, alright, so that's an understanding of how this works. And with that in mind, we can start thinking of carving up the bar here. Prices. Economy. Yeah, just looking back and forth across this, they've kind of put it upside down. Really, the price floor has been put on the top, and the price ceiling has been put on the bottom. That just right away seems like the wrong way to organize it. Put your low values low and your high values high. And then also the inflation gauge lives here as well, just for you in some way pass the amount of gold being collected from gold mines through the same system and then get a value from 5% to 33%. And we do kind of vaguely have color that has been affiliated with each trade good. Not quite unique ones. Just kind of take some gross samples here. Well, no, I've definitely grabbed a background pixel there. It'd probably be easier to go to the counters. And use that to appraise which color is which. Quickly look over the raw scans of all the counter sheets. Because one of those has all the price tokens on it. And go ahead and put that on camera. I think this, yeah, here we are. This is the right one. Here be tokens. Here be pirates. And there's all the trade goods. And their definitive associated official colors. Yeah, so I can sample off of there and transfer a splotch back onto the other sheet. You know, that iconic off-brown sugar. Not to be confused with fish brown. Or no, that's fur brown, yeah. Fish, which are the ocean. Yes, I have cotton, sugar, need a sample of tobacco. Yeah, that's all. And we snap back to the work in progress, and immediately the problem should be obvious. These are all very close to each other on the old colors wheel. So right away, there's some things I could do to quickly salvage this. If cotton is supposed to be kind of pink, then let's just make it, yes, magenta. Spice can be assigned completely red. Just stowing these for the moment, and then we sort out how I'm going to apply those visually in order to provide all of these marks for highs and lows. Yeah, get my whole working surface back here. Fish. Much blue. What's the most definitively orange? Yeah, 255 red, 128 green. Yeah, that's exactly orange. Fur, though. Gotta isolate fur, tobacco, and sugar from each other. Okay, right away, I think the easiest first step to take we could assign green to tobacco. You know, probably a deeper, meatier green than that, but for now, just to have it out of the way. The alive plant, rather than the already dried and crushed and rolled plant. Puts it far enough away from fur. Which, on that note, let me go ahead and try to get But I got reference images to look at for some of the fur. One of several creatures which were exploited for use of fuzz. Kind of go a bit brighter, although then that starts to close in on the Philip, why did you even decide that silk and ceramic should be orange? Wouldn't that make more sense as like a pale blue? I can understand not wanting to make any of these tokens white. Since that's, of course, the first thing you'd think for sugar. And now you're putting white square on white board. Hmm. Another thought would be, is there other color that I could meaningfully associate with the slave trade other than skin tone? Other than exactly on the nose melanin. I think part of the escape here is to redefine our color for China wear, take it out of there. Because, yeah, actually, cobalt blue, widely used in old Chinese ceramics. Which, conveniently, there is an official definition. There's cobalt. Which would then compel me to assign something else to fish. Yeah, there we go. Just shift these above the backing layer there for the moment, so I can kind of use them as splotches. What else would fish color be? Distinctly. Fish themselves come in every damn color. Under what situation do we associate cotton with pink anyway? Phil chose weird colors while he was making this game. Are there any more colorful fur? Which a lot of the problem converges back on, okay, a lot of this is going to be either white, earth tones, or greens. We're talking about plants, animals, and people as commodity. Since these are text labels, I could drop the color coding entirely. Since the color doesn't make any damn sense anyway. It's not like I'm filling all of these with a continuous bar to present the range of prices. That there wouldn't be enough room for, with 8 different trade goods. Each bar would be a couple pixels tall. Yeah, like how large is this space I have here? 40. That'd be 5 pixels each if I wanted to have an indicator bar for each thing. Although the end result of that, if we back out a good way, would be minuscule. Not at all useful. So if I get in here and just start making labels. Because yeah, if the label for sugar is anything resembling white, it is going to vanish. But do I go with gray sugar? You definitely use the hot text for spice. Each label just needs to be dark enough to stand out on the brighter background. And add a size where it can be read. Really, the pink cotton. Alright, so hey, I want to take this text. Everything about it. Pop it over here. And that's the highest of the price floors, by far. Sugar is able to completely dive into the pit. All the signature goods of the New World are able to just completely devalue into nothingness when overproduced. Yeah, that label has no reason to be up here, instead of down here where the numbers it belongs to are. So tobacco prices can just kind of bully their way in there. Fish, which is a better store of value than sugar. That sound eternal investment vehicle. Fish. If I take this layer, sneak it back underneath the mask here. Just let it hide over there with a sample of each of these colors. Or at least things resembling these colors. And then just paint a backing for this bar of just all F. Full power. About as much use as the original bar, and now it's clean. Back out a little so I can have everything on camera here. And try to darken that up a bit. Although, once again, seeing the same label happen more than once, side by side. Sort of compels me to make something of that. Which, on that note, I should probably also do to the pricing track up there. Just go ahead and redraw these lines. Alright, I have this residual selection box. Let me snip that out of there. So I want grid line going all the way over here. And this can just stop. And I'll extend the background funk up into this. Go ahead and do that now. And put on the third Kong. And then living up here on the grid, go ahead and knock out a couple of walls. Full campaign of Europa would definitely take much longer than Axis and Allies. That has much fewer moving parts. The full Euro campaign is one of those things you would not do in a single session. This is a game played over many weekends. With an appropriately dedicated group of persons who feel like routinely meeting up and conducting a board. I should move all of these up. Well, that is results. Some elements of the board are now clean. So most of the remaining stuff on the top side is just, yeah, writing out the rest of the big headers. I said diplomacy grid is fine, format-wise, so that's just going to be labeled. Everything about how tech grid is formatted is okay. So that'll just be labeled out as well. Just the one row of squished cells on the turn grid. It's fine. It's just the year, the turn number, and the minor tech markers. Those all fit. Whereas all these are color-coded. The Grand Campaign is divided into a series of historical periods that span some number of turns. They have their own event tables, and various mechanics hang off of which period you're in. Start, end, and so forth. Turns 1 to 6, 7 to 14, 15 to 25, etc. Yeah, player switching countries sounds weird. It is weird. But there's plenty about how the game is built to, like, set you up to be ready for that shift if you are in either of the chaos slots here. Yeah, I think I've been winding down for tangible progress. A couple decisions were made and implemented. Bar looks pretty good rearranged. Could snap open the Europe map again. Hop over there for a moment. Maybe even dive in and do a round of something productive. So the concept of core territory is something that is present all the way back in the board game. You can see these vague, hazy lines on some of the borders. Those are the boundaries of some countries, as far as their immutable core territory that's always a part of them. Or rather, it can be taken from them, but anything that is not core to you is going to be very prone to revolt. And what might also be visible on this pass of the map, or maybe not. Let me see here of the couple of... No, so there's some copy of this map where I had gone in and penciled in where all the borders of the minor countries are, since there are a bunch of minor countries that are not the players, but do exist on here and have their own defined perimeters. And how minor countries work in this is they're inert until acted upon. They don't do anything until they're put into motion by player action or event. And when that happens, one of the players is assigned control of a minor. For the duration of its wake up. And that player, for their actions while they're controlling the minor country, will still earn victory points. Because that's your ultimate goal here, accumulating points. As one does in games. Definitely. And how it decides which player controls which minor is there's a list for each minor of, like, priorities. Where you choose the first country, well, the first player on the list who is not engaged in hostility against the minor at that moment. And each of those priority lists is set up so that, in general, a player is going to be piloting the minors who are the natural targets of their natural opposition. So, like, Egypt and Persia and the whichever Khanate is out here in Crimea. They might just call it Crimea in Europa Zero. But, like, those will all prioritize to, like, Venice or Portugal, as Portugal, being the player who will become Russia, cares about what's happening out here, you know, a bunch of turns down the line once they jump over the fence. And so even before you've switched over into your endgame country, you're still also playing your endgame country. And after you've vacated your starter country, you still have residual interest in how it's doing. Just because you can still earn score by doing your best to have them struggle against the wheel of history. And maybe even succeed. I don't know how feasible it is under how this works to try and divert too far off course. Miners can't take territory for themselves. They can reclaim their own territory if it had been conquered off of them. Miners only grow by event. Like, for example, I think at game start there is just a Moscow as a minor country out here, and then it ramps up towards being Russia and annexes a bunch of stuff briefly before the Russia player dives in to become Russia. Drawing this line of French core territory that excludes Lorraine. Although that does put into mind at which points did France control Lorraine. I know the important one down the line where they have it in the early 1800s, then lose it to Prussia, which becomes Germany, and do not receive it back until the World War. Yes, there's French core line. Yeah, there's the tiny bit of English line there. I have to look back at the board to be sure. This is the only land border the English get. Wales is recognized only as a province. Wales is fully annexed. and Spain, which gets to exist in this weird state of, for like the very earliest slice of the game, Spain is also Austria. Until the right events fragment the Habsburg Union. Just this little haze out on the sea, this aura to let you know that here be Spaniards. Or here be Catalans? Or do the Balears have their own distinctive culture from the rest of Iberia? Don't know much about the Isles. Alright, let me take out the board to be sure of this. No borderline around Gibraltar. Gibraltar is just in as of game start of Euro 0. So along that front, what color should be representative of the Portugal whose ghost goes on to possess Russia? There's both green and red in the flag. Though that's also the modern flag. Though that's also good enough. Yeah, drop that to just a 60% green. There we go. But yeah, I do have a copy of this image where I traced out all the minor country borders. For Europe and for World. Since there are some miners that live out on the rest of the world map and have full minor country mechanics. Alright, now Netherlands core's up here. That should be obvious. Where probably the weirdest thing about the multi-country players over the Grand Campaign is how Venice gets to decide if they want to be Austria or be the Netherlands. Where that's decide in that the Dutch Revolt has to happen and succeed for a player to become the Netherlands. So if that just somehow fizzles and the Spanish Netherlands remain a thing, then, yep, they just don't exist. It didn't happen. Reach over for the map again. Yeah, there's no core lines over in Italy, but at the start of the Grand Campaign, Spain does have control over Naples. And will get itself into a fight. Now, Venetian colors. Heraldry is mostly red? And that is quite a handsome design. So actually, let me just drag that in here for a moment. That's the flag of the Venetian Republic. everything you associate with merchant republics. Lions, books. And the tales there are for each of Venice's formal sister cities. Which would be the other merchant republics of the era. Presumably, I can go check on what's the list then that goes into that. Also, this is the peacetime version of the flag. If the Republic was at war, there was an alternate version of the flag where the lion is carrying a sword. Or no, the seven tales are the seven provinces of the region of Venice. Sister cities in that they are outlying communities within Venice, or around Venice. Neat. So with that in mind, I guess it's reasonable enough to also throw in orange here. Or I could make it redder. Yeah, stick with the orange. For the time being. So, things that remain to do for down the road. Gotta create icons to fill in for all the places where there's some kind of informational icon, like these gold mines. Like cities and ports themselves. Trade centers. Storm danger indices. Levels of piracy. All that good data. And then a lot of labeling. Alright, looking back at the source map to be sure that, yes, this is also a core line. Although, is it straight from Styria to Salzburg? No, it does also span Tyrol there. Whose label has been mostly devoured by the scanner. Yeah, there we go. It stands out a little better on the non-boosted scan. The low contrast image, at least for this one. Habsburg, which just kind of protuberate all the way up to Bohemia. Or Hafriculling, I think they're only considered the south part at the start of the game, and then at some point extend to envelop the rest. But at some point before Austria becomes a player option. So the full extent of it is what gets highlighted. Just leaves Ottoman cores. And Russian cores. Right, that's where the line goes. Stops at Wallachia. And at Bug. At least I think at Bug? Or it doesn't envelop Bug. Stop shy of Bug. Alright, that just leaves lines for Russia. And with it, the collision that's naturally going to happen of more than one country who can reasonably assert green is what they're about. Although, let's see, hey, Moscow. The Grand Duchy of Moscow. What did you like on your banner? How do you adopt that into core territory? Suppose the step forward I could take. What were the earliest flags of Imperial Russia? Because they had their own white, blue, and red. But for how long did they have that? The standard of the Tsar dates back to 1693. A white, blue, red with the two-headed eagle. The fundamental problem of there's only like 7 colors that are used across almost all flags. Yeah, so the starting Moscow cores are all up behind this haze here. So Novgorod, Pskov. Not or whatever that is. Velikia? Tula. Moscow itself. And this Ural territory. Home of Nizhny Novgorod. Well, I have to put something here. And as long as it's all exactly the same thing, it'll be very easy to change down the line. Just needs to be there, correctly formed. And for the time being, it should show up pretty well against the redrawn terrain. Which should do well enough, since a good ways before I would have it, beautified, perhaps, to satisfaction. In compliance with our themes, with the spirit of the source material. Once I have it feature complete, it will be in a playable state. Once it successfully conveys all the data visually. At which point, all that would remain would be to press gang 5 other people into some sort of weekly or bi-weekly time slot. Then magic could happen. Yeah, I think all of that is correct. Shouldn't be any artifacting there. Yep, that's all as designed. Russia is just kind of looming in from over the corner of the board. The Ottoman core line kind of blends in, especially against the forest there. That may need to be brightened up. Or the terrain further muted. Yeah, against forests and swamps, the green borders blend in pretty well. Venice and Habsburg stand out pretty fine. France is recognizably there. Spain, Portugal, present. Low Countries, slinking on by. And the one English line. Oh yes, also among the off-camera bits of stuff I did, I made one pass at altering the mountain texture a bit. I lightened up the valley overall and took the chance to slightly smudge up the edges of it, make it a bit more irregular. There's still some belts of it that are kind of long. There are others that are more successfully broken up now. Like, you can kind of get a before and after, almost, of this row to this row. a bit more tinkering with it, and I'll be able to create kind of a nice repeating flavor. I also added a couple of little tiny dark touches to the forest texture, although those don't show up very well once you zoom out. Once you're viewing it from space, it still just kind of blends back together. Swamp remains perfect. Swamp, sand. Accomplish everything they set out to do. So, yes. Progress. Some formatting, some labeling, some processing. Gonna get some more of the grunt work in off camera, getting grids labeled and labels labeled and what have you. Probably next session of this is gonna be thinking about icons, and drawing icons, and then placing icons. All manner of visual things that want to be, yeah, before, after. Well, before, during. After remains to be seen. Someday. Gradually shaping up.